I make toy boats. This has been my main occupation for a very long time. By long time, I don't mean a few weeks or even a few months. I mean years. Maybe even more years than most people would want to think about toy boats. But this is what I do, and I have been doing it for a long time enough that the process has become incredibly normal to me. Every morning, I wake up at the same time each day. I then have a very normal breakfast, normally toast and a beverage of some kind. After breakfast, I walk to my small workshop at the back of my house. The workshop is not very large. There is a table, a few bookshelves, a few tools, and a chair that makes a small creaking sound when I sit down. Once I sit down, I start making the toy boats. The first thing I do is pick a block of wood. I have a bunch of wooden blocks on a shelf in the workshop. They are all pretty much the same size. At times, I will look at the blocks before picking one, even though they are basically the same. Then, I start carving. Making a toy boat is not a very fast process. You have to chip off small amounts of wood at a time. If you chip off too much at once, the boat will look strange. And a strange-looking boat is not really desirable when the goal is to make something that looks at least somewhat similar to a boat. After that, the sanding. Sanding is probably the most boring part, which is saying something, considering the entire activity is already somewhat boring. Sanding is just the process of rubbing the sandpaper against the wood until the wood is smooth. Sanding can take a long time, depending on how smooth you want the boat to be. I usually make mine fairly smooth. Finally, after I have finished sanding the boat, I paint the boat. I have several little paint cans on a shelf. I have blue paint, red paint, white paint, and several other colors that I don't use very often. Most of the time, I paint my boats blue or red. Then I put the sail on the boat. The sail is usually made up of a little piece of cloth attached to a little wooden stick. I put the stick into a little hole in the middle of the boat. Then I have the option of putting a little flag at the top of the boat, but I don't always do that. And that's how I make my toy boats. Now you're probably wondering how I get my toy boats to the people who want to buy them. Well, I don't sell my toy boats. My friend does. My friend's name is Daniel. Daniel and I have known each other for a very long time. Longer than I have been making my toy boats, for instance. Daniel is very good at several things, but making toy boats is not one of them. I know this because he tried once. It did not go well. The boat he made looked less like a boat and more like a piece of wood that had accidentally become slightly pointy on one end. We both looked at it for a while before concluding that it probably should not be sold to anyone. However, Daniel is very good at talking to people. As a result, we devised a plan a number of years ago. I would make the boats, he would sell the boats. When he sold a boat, we would split the money he got from selling it. Half would go to Daniel, half would go to me. This was a very simple system. There was no need to perform any complex arithmetic. If he sold a boat for $10, he would give me $5. If he sold a boat for $20, he would give me $10 too. This system worked quite well for a number of years. He would usually stop by my workshop in the afternoon. He would bring a small box with him. This box contained the money he had collected from selling the boats he had sold that day. He would put it on the table. "Sold a few," he would usually say. We would open it together and count the money inside. We would make two piles. One pile would belong to Daniel. One pile would belong to me. Both piles would be the same size. Once the piles were done, Daniel would take the money and go home. I would put the money in the drawer of the table. After that, I would continue to sand the boat or paint something. And that was how most days went. In fact, most days went exactly like that for so long that they seemed to blend together. I would wake up, make the boats, and eventually Daniel would come with the money box. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. But one day, something slightly out of the ordinary happened. It all began when I was making a new boat. It was going to be like the other ones. I made the boat in the same way as the other ones, and I sanded it in the same way. However, when I got to the painting stage, I decided to make something slightly different. I decided to use a different shade of blue than the ones I had been using all this time. In addition to that, I decided to make a white stripe along the side of the boat. I had never done this before, although I am not really sure why I did it. It was not really hard to do, because I had simply never thought of doing it. After that, I made the sail of the boat slightly larger than the ones I had been making. When I was done, I placed the boat on the table with the other ones. Later in the day, Daniel came. "New one?" he asked, picking the boat from the table. "Yes," I replied. He looked at the boat for a moment. "Nice stripe," he said. "Thank you," I replied. He then put the boat in the box with the other ones and went to sell them. The next day, Daniel came earlier than usual. He came in with the money box, but this time it seemed heavier. He put it on the table, and it made a louder sound than usual. "Something interesting happened," he said. "What happened?" I asked. "That blue boat with the stripe sold immediately," he said. "Oh," I said. "Then people kept asking if there were more like it," he said. "That is interesting," I said. Daniel opened the money box and poured the money on the table. There was more money in the box than usual. We counted the money as usual and divided it between the two of us. Half was his and half was mine. But after this day, I started to make more of the striped blue boats. I used the same blue paint, the same white stripe, and made the sails a little bigger. Daniel continued selling the boats, and again people kept buying them. The money box kept getting heavier and heavier. Every day, Daniel would come with the money box and put it on the table in the workshop. "Blue boats today," he said. We poured the money on the table and started dividing it. But one day something strange happened. We were in the middle of dividing the money when Daniel stopped. He stared at the money on the table. Then he started moving some of his money to my side. I stared at him. "You moved the money," I said. "Yes," he said. "Well," he said, "you made the boat." I thought about that. "That has always been true," I said. Daniel nodded. "That is true. But this particular boat was your idea." I wasn't entirely convinced that the stripe qualified as a major idea, but Daniel seemed convinced about it. So we left the piles as they were. Mine was slightly larger. The following day, Daniel repeated the same action. We split the money. Then he gave a little more of it to me. "You do not have to do that," I said. "I know," he replied. "But you keep doing it." "Yes," he said, but slowly the system began to change. It wasn't quite as evenly split as it used to be. Daniel still sold the boats, I still built the boats, but my pile was slightly larger than his. The interesting thing is that nothing else really changed. I still woke up every morning and carved wooden blocks into boats. I still spent hours and hours sanding the boats smooth. I still painted the boats dark blue and added the small white stripe. The workshop still remained quiet and peaceful. The chair still creaked when I sat down on it. The shelves still had stacks of wooden blocks waiting to be turned into boats. Daniel still came to the workshop in the afternoon with the money box under his arm. Sometimes we talked about things, and sometimes we didn't talk much at all. We still put the money on the table and counted it all out. And then we still divided it into two piles. My pile was slightly larger. This is, for the most part, the entire story. I went on making my toy boats. Daniel went on selling my toy boats. The striped boat remained popular, still for reasons I do not fully understand. Days went by. Weeks went by. Even the slightly larger piles of money began to seem normal. And this is how things have been for quite some time now. Now you might be wondering, why am I telling you this story? Well, the reason why is because I was bored.